My name is Steve Crocker. I'll be the moderator, but more importantly, I have the honor and privilege of introducing today's speaker, Roberto Gaetano. I'm going to use the classic model of first I'm going to tell you, and then I'll tell you, and then I tell you what I'm going to tell you, and then I'll tell you, and then I'll tell you what I told you. But since it's just the introduction, we'll make it super quick. Here's what I'm going to tell you, that Roberto has been around a long time, and he's a great guy. And now I'm going to expand on that and give you the full picture. He's now retired. He's been an international civil servant at the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, in Vienna, Austria. He's been an active participant in the internet and the ICANN policymaking process since 1997, which is a year before ICANN was formally started. As a representative of the European Telecommunications Standards Institute, ETSI, he played important roles in the formation of CORE, that's the Council of Internet Registrars, the policy discussions around the U.S. government's white paper, International Forum on White Paper, and the formation of ICANN's original domain name supporting organization, DNSO. He served as one of the first chairs of the DNSO General Assembly, and has focused his efforts in recent years on the presence of internet users in policy development process, in particular for users whose mother tongue is not English. Roberto served 6 years on the ICANN board, and I had the pleasure of serving on that board with him. The first 3 as a non-voting liaison by the at-large advisory committee, and then as a voting director, including 2 years as vice chair. He's also served 6 years on the Public Interest Registry, that's the PIR board, and including 2 years as chair. He comes to this with actually a certain amount of education and technical background. His degree in mathematics and an MBA, and he has more than 30 years of experience in telecommunications and information technology, acquired working for different organizations in different countries, and is fluent in 5 European languages. So that's what I was going to tell you, but I'm going to tell you what I've told you in much simpler terms. Roberto is a wise and thoughtful guy, and he's someone to hang out with. I've had that pleasure, and you will too here. Over to you, Roberto.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve, for this really complete presentation. And yes, I do remember the years that we spent together on the board, and also a couple of personal circumstances where we had the opportunity to know ourselves better. So, but back to business. Yeah, I will explain what my presentation will be. I will go through not really a history of the internet governance, because that's probably something that you know very well, but just point out some elements in this history that are important. And then in the second part, I would like to talk about interplanetary networks, the way I understand it and the way it's being developed, and what could be the similarities. The idea is, since the process of developing and applying a governance system or model to the regular traditional internet has had a lot of trouble in the implementation, is to see whether, at least for the interplanetary network governance model, for the implementation of a model like that, we can avoid the mistakes or difficulties that we had in the traditional internet. Of course, there will be other problems, new problems, but at least we can avoid the old ones. I'm just while I'm talking, I'm thinking about a motto that the first chair of ICANN, Esther Dyson, used to say, that is, always make new mistakes, which means we go forward and maybe we do new mistakes, but at least avoid repeating the old ones. So I'll start by saying that in the beginning, by reminding that the internet was developed by the technical community, and that was intended to be used, at least in the ideas of the initiators, the creators of this, of which Steve Crocker is one of the most prominent people. The idea was to have a network among scientists and anyway technical people, and in this situation, one of the key issues and one of the key words that we must remember is the trust. Everything was based on trust in the beginning. The network, the internet, was linking together other scientific networks and in allowing intercommunication, but basically people knew each other, and so this trust was fundamental in the beginning. Everything was developed with this idea. As the technical community grew, there was the need to define some identifiers in order to have some human-friendly way of recognizing the different nodes and therefore the different people. And so a system of a naming system was developed, but it was still in the early days something that was of limited, with a limited number. Then the internet grew, and there was the need of defining not only these identifiers, but also some formal way of recognizing and developing a tool that was used for easy and human-friendly addressing. So slowly the domain name system was developed. Every node was given a domain name, but still we were working in a situation where we had the trust among all the participants. So this was completely functional at that time. However, in time, there was a few things that happened. For instance, I think it was in 1995, but I might be off by a year or so. Issuing the domain names has become a commercial activity, in the sense that if you want to have a domain name, you were paying $50. That was the initial rate per year, and so as you may say, this has started becoming a business. Not only that, is that the business as a whole realized that the internet, especially after the development of the World Wide Web in, I think, 1989, which itself has been developed in CERN just to make some community communication easier, but still among scientists. Actually, it was it was intended to exchange communication, automatize also the distribution of documentation among scientists. However, the commercial interests of the internet and including the World Wide Web has been recognized, and we had started having business running using the internet, and that becoming a vital element. At that point, there was a sort of a paradigm shift because the commercial interests started playing a prominent role in the further development of the internet, let's say by the mid-90s. At this point, something was basically happening, that this initial situation of trust among scientists was no longer what was ruling the internet, the way that the internet was used, and conflicting commercial interests came into play, and it was and there was the need to find a way to give rules for the behavior and the rules for the governance. And basically, this is the moment when worldwide, not only the technical community, but whoever was using the internet started asking the question, who runs the internet and who establishes the rules for the internet? One of the most important elements for this was who has the control over the domain name system. I'm not explaining here what the domain name system is, because I assume that everybody knows. The important thing is that at that time, I'm talking about mid-90s, there was one central authority that had the control on the root, which is basically the most important part of the domain name system. And that authority was a single man, John Postel. And it was around 96, 97, when a question came up, and whether we needed to have a formal structure of governance, specifically for the DNS, that was not relying on the decision of one man, but that was establishing rules. I'm just reminding that, for instance, when the country code domain names were introduced, that means one top-level domain for each country, the authority that was deciding who had the control of that top-level domain for the country, and therefore the domain name system stemming from this top-level domain for the country was in fact John Postel, and this often was decided with a phone call or email messages. So everything was in the hands of John Postel. At that point, the floodgates opened, and there were in 96, there were different proposal for how to run the internet, in the sense to establish a formal governance model. There was an international ad hoc committee, IHAC, including also the United Nations. The European Commission was pretty much in it, that was proposing a model. And then in 97, the US government issued first a green paper and then a white paper establishing some rules. Then there were a lot of competing proposals, the strongest of which were the IAHC, and in parallel, there was the Internet IFWP, Internet Forum for the White Paper, that developed a different proposal that eventually then gathered that was the sort of the winning proposal, by including also some of the points that were developed and proposed by the IHAC. So basically, in 1998, with this proposal, ICANN was formed as the body that was going to coordinate all these activities, and therefore that was the central point for the internet governance. I think in November 98, the US government signed a memorandum of understanding with ICANN, and delegated formally to ICANN the authority to run the identifiers of the internet, basically domain names, addresses, and other identifiers. So this was the situation. One thing that I have to say is that one relevant point is that all this, I mean, I've lived through this starting 97, and we had a sense of urgency. There was a lot of pressure to come up with a working solution that could finally formalize the situation, the internet governance, because of the different pressures, economic pressures, the business pressures, international pressures. The governments worldwide had started to grasp the importance that the internet had in developing business, the importance for the economy, and so therefore even the individual governments wanted to have a role in the governance model, and so we had to quickly come up with a solution, and we managed. I also it's important to note that in the fall of 98, John Postel passed away, and if we didn't have already something in place, it would have been really a very serious problem. So this is basically the story, and the not really the story, but the problems and the highlights of the development of the governance model, we eventually ended up with a model that is multi-stakeholder, in the sense that every stakeholder has a say in deciding the governance of internet. And so at the end, now we have a sort of balance between the different interests for all the people who have an interested stake in the internet, including the users that were the last to get into the picture, for the simple reasons that the users, by definition, do something else and don't do internet as a job. So the second part is I would like to. I'm not an expert in the InterPlanetary Network, but I see a lot of similarities, and therefore the opportunity of take advantage of the past history. I would like to start by saying that by now the interplanetary network is basically an affair that is run by technical people that, and the most important thing is to lay out the technology for communication in space. And that is basically the role that scientists have. And as usual, for in the scientific community, there's a lot of trust and understanding that goes beyond also national barriers. And so this is the way I see it is very similar to the beginning of the internet, in terms of the fact that it was it is the scientific community that that plays an important role. On the other hand, it is obvious to me that commercial interests are going to play a role in the future. For instance, we have already the situation in which we have different networks of satellites. Different companies are launching satellites that are engaging in space communication. I am also under the impression, and correct me if I'm wrong, that different companies have different systems for communication. And the moment that if we have to think about a common protocol, that would be the sort of network of networks that the internet has. There's going to be a lot of discussion already at the technical level. But what is more important is the moment that we have a payload on the communication, that those people who have the interest in having communication channels will also have an interest in the way the whole interplanetary network is run. So my point is that we should lay out the principles of governance of the interplanetary network before the commercial interests are so powerful that they are able to condition the development of this governance system, of a governance model, and also that we should make sure that from the beginning we have all the different key stakeholder playing a role. So we should have a way of involving the users, even thinking about the potential future users of the InterPlanetary Network, to the development of a governance model. And this model, in my personal opinion, should be multi-stakeholder, in the sense that every stakeholder must have to role to play. So basically, the question is, what are the mechanisms that we need to put in place? What are the processes? Who is the authority that has the control over these processes? How can we, from the start, combine the different also national interests? And how are we going to convince the people to work together in order to have a common system? I'm just thinking about may I say, the traditional internet or current internet. These days, there's a lot of discussion that is being done in terms of internet fragmentation. So the risk of losing this one world, one internet concept. So that for different reasons, parts of the internet would have the temptation to isolate themselves. And I think that this also, all these forces that are pushing towards fragmentation of the internet, those forces similar forces will be in place also while running the InterPlanetary Network. And I think that we should think about this already up front in order to make the model so solid that we don't find ourselves with just a series of different non-interconnectable networks, and each run by different authorities. So the reason why I'm saying this is that the experience that we had with the governance model of the internet is that in the years from 96, 97, we have spent an incredible amount of resources in order to get together and to build the system. And over the years, whoever has participated in ICANN has witnessed the amount of time, so all the resources that are spent in order to make this model work. And these lessons, this path that the internet has followed in order to establish and run the model. Let's think about, for instance, all the reviews that we had in the past. The introduction, I think it was in 92, of a different way of involving users with the at-large creation of the at-large advisory committee that was gathering the interest of the internet users worldwide. The reform later on of the GNSO in order to better balance the interests of the contracted parties, that is basically registries and registrars, and users to balance also the power of the registries and the registrars and the power of commercial and non-commercial users. All this should be a reference should be studied by who is going to be involved in the development of a governance model for the interplanetary network.
Let me cut in at this point, because you made two very good points that we should think hard about the governance early rather than late, if I might summarize it that way, and that we have to involve all of the relevant people. We have two questions, one in the chat and one in the Q&A. They're different, but they're related, so I'm going to share both questions with you and let you go from there. They both are of the form, okay, accepting what you've just said, how do you go beyond that? So the first question is, you mentioned at the beginning that everybody was trusting. How would you go about designing a system from scratch that's more robust? And the other question is, what would it take to create a multi-stakeholder system, governance system for the solar system internet? So taking the points that you've been making, I think each of those questions asks you to go to the next step and say, okay, fill in some of the blanks about how would we actually do this?
Yes. Yeah. Well, to the first question, the short answer is I don't know, in the sense that we cannot sort of think in a vacuum of a governance system and then apply it to a living body. And I think that how to develop a governance system for the solar system internet or the interplanetary network has to be discussed by people who deeply know the characteristics and not only technical but also human, social, and economic about the interplanetary network. I think that only the people who work on this topic can design some in detail some characteristics of the governance model. This is something. Okay, the internet governance model can be used as a reference, but I don't think that there's an easy way of mapping that to a situation that has peculiarities, that has similarities, but also differences. The answer to the second question seems to be more complicated, but is actually easier. The only way in which we can involve all the stakeholders is by informing them, make them aware that something is happening, and make them aware that if they don't speak up now, it might be too late later on. So it is, I think that the role of information is vital here. I have heard about the interplanetary network many years ago, but it's only in this last, I would say, couple of years that this issue has found itself a place in international in the international arena, in fora like the IGF or in ICANN itself. there was recently this year a discussion about the network for low orbit satellites and all the problems that might arise with that. And that there was a session a few months ago on that. I'm here at the IGF. There are a couple of things of sessions that address the point of a solar system internet, or generally of a space internet. We had in the past a session, for instance, at Eurodig that was addressing the delay tolerant networks, that is sort of the foundation of the space communication. The problem is that, at least in my opinion, there is not enough awareness by the general public of the issues that are related to a governance for a space internet. And the risk is that only the organizations and people that have strongest interests, specific interests in how a governance model should be developed and what in who controls what, that will be able to have a say, whereas people who have less stringent interests, but still are important in a multi-stakeholder model, just come late in the game. So what I would say is an effort in making people aware about the issues.
A couple of questions have come in that indicate that the process has already started and we're beginning to see some complexity. So one question, Jenny Spicer says, it seems like it would be easy for space governance to be seen as a multilateral rather than multi-stakeholder exercise. Are there practices from the traditional internet that you think would encourage the use of a multi-stakeholder input process? And the other question goes along a slightly different issue. How do we better synchronize the efforts of the parallel standards bodies that exist in this discussion? One such body is the CCSDS, which I believe is the Consultative Committee on Space Data Systems, or if I haven't garbled that too badly. And the other is the IETF working group, which manages the BP, the Bundle Protocol suite of protocols, and is governed in a much more multi-stakeholder way. So there's some weighty questions to chew on. I was thinking about how to take the experience we have in the in ICANN, which is sometimes very contentious and laborious, and having people talking past each other despite serious attempts to deal with multiple languages. And I just shudder to think that all my experience of dealing with Martians is that they're much tougher than any of the people that I've run into in ICANN.
So the first question, if I understand correctly, is about the tendency to have a multilateral rather than a multi-stakeholder model. Yes. Well, the point is that a multilateral model has the tendency, well, it's not, I mean, it runs by agreement by different governments. Since different governments have a different way of governing and a different way of involving the different stakeholders in their country, there's no there's no guarantee that all the voices will play a role. Let me put this bluntly. Governments will make an agreement by taking care of their national interests. And so it's going to be a discussion that is a balance among the national interests, with no guarantee that the different type of voices within a country are represented. So that's the risk of a multilateral agreement, and that has also a higher risk of future fragmentation if the balance of interests is broken. Then the tendency, and that's what we see in the internet, the tendency of governments, of some governments, to separate themselves because there's something running on the internet that has been agreed that they don't like, then to separate themselves from the global internet. So that's one point. On the other hand, we cannot deny that if the leading role is from the industry, we have a similar situation, but in the sense that commercial interests that are stronger may take a more prominent role, and so, but in my opinion, this is a situation that that we can manage in a better way in an international arena. The important thing is that we don't have in a multi-stakeholder model one stakeholder group that is more powerful than others. So we need to develop a model by which there is a mechanism to balance the internet, the interests. As I'm thinking about something that we had to do in ICANN, in the GNSO at a certain point in time, when the user's voice was recognized to be less powerful, quote unquote, than the commercial users, and generally speaking, that there was a overwhelming power by the contracted parties. And so we needed to rebalance that in the GNSO. I remember well that because I was the chair of the board governance committee that eventually designed the new structure. So yeah, in other words, the multi-stakeholder model is probably a little bit more difficult to achieve, but gives in the end better results in terms of resilience of the system, because items, when they get into discussion, are discussed by all stakeholders at the same time. That's for the first question. Can you please remind me what the second question was?
Second question, how do we better synchronize the efforts of the parallel standards bodies that exist in this discussion? One such body is the CCSDS, the Consultative Committee on Space Data Systems, which is a multilaterally controlled entity. The other is the ITF Working Group, which manages the BP suite of protocols and is governed in a much more multi-stakeholder way.
Yeah, well, I think that we have international fora and I think that is the place where those different positions, those different the work of these different groups has to be brought together to find a synthesis. I think that this is the reason why I was also saying that we should bring awareness of the problems and we should bring the discussion. I think that the first choice will be the IGF, the global IGF, but also the regional and national IGFs. After all, we are talking about governance, and the IGF global and regional and national bodies are the place where governance is discussed. So I think that we should invite those bodies that are interested in one part of the picture related to space internet into in discussion into these international bodies. So, for instance, higher effort in bringing this topic to the attention of whoever of the MAG in the specific, the management of the IGF, in order to include these topics in future editions of the IGF. But also, locally and regionally, there are some conferences where these topics should be discussed. So basically, the only solution possible is to bring these people to talk together and to figure out whether then we can come to a synthesis of the different needs, a balance among the different interests.
Thank you very much. There's a question that I don't completely understand, but I'll tell you the way it's written. IETF is far away to be multi-stakeholder since it does not have representation. I've asked for clarification, but I don't see it. Perhaps the questioner is referring to the fact that the IETF is based around individual participation rather than specific groups and constituencies, the way ICANN and other groups are based. And whether that's a feature or a bug probably depends upon what one's background and experience is. We're basically at the time for this, and I know that Laura has a little bit to present to us. So let me take this point to say thank you very much. This has been a thoughtful and provocative discussion, presentation of the issues, and very much appreciated.
Steve, if I may, just in a few seconds, I will try to address this point.
Go ahead.
With an example. I mean, the IETF, yes, is not in itself a multi-stakeholder, a model for as multi-stakeholder, but that has, every organization chooses the model that better fits there. The most important thing is how the IETF relates to the other stakeholder groups, and I'm just quoting one thing. I remember in 97 and 98, there was a lot of discussion. There was this Poisson working group in the IETF to which I participated. I had a hard time in convincing technologists participating to the IETF that they needed to participate to the ICANN formation. I used this terminology sometimes. incorrectly, but effectively. We need some sanity in the ICANN, in building ICANN, in the sense that we need to have the voice of the technical community to communicate and to agree with to balance the commercial interests. So yes, we need to have these bodies that you mentioned before that are involved in the interplanetary network development. We need to bring them at the table, because at a certain point in time we are going to have commercial interests that are going to prevail over the technology, unless we bring everybody together and everybody is able to make their points. Thank you.
Thank you. We need to turn things over to Laura here. I'll note that there's two more questions in the Q&A. One of them is, how do we see the internet and its impact within 5 years of time? Any important impact that you feel should be a matter of concern? This is the kind of question that should have been asked much earlier in this session. This isn't too big a question to take up now, so hold that question for some other time and some other place. And then Scott Johnson says this, it seems the RIR model is the most open and viable for this situation. And I think you've already expressed your opinion on that. So I'm going to play my role here as moderator and call time on this whole session. Thank you very much. And let me thank you personally. It's a pleasure to see you. I enjoy hanging out with you. And it's good to see you, my friend.